Today we're going to look at simplifying polynomials, and actually all the polynomials we're going to look at today, I think, they're all going to be monomials. Next day we'll look at simplifying binomials and trinomials and four-term polynomials, but I believe today we're going to do all monomials. It's kind of like the first step. But you get this, you're going to get the other ones as well. So in order to introduce this idea, I have to talk about like terms and unlike terms. Like terms are terms with the same variables raised to exactly the same powers. Let's give a few examples of that. So if we had something like 4x squared, a like term would be, I don't know, negative 2x squared. You see how they have the same variable, x, and the same exponent, or the same power, squared and squared. Or it could be 3 over 7x squared. Still works. You got the x, you got the squared. Could just be x squared. Could be 9.76x squared. As long as it's any of those things, it's good. How about another one? What if we had negative 12m cubed n squared? Well, a like term could be 7m cubed n squared. Or negative 18 n cubed n squared. How about this? 72 n squared m cubed. Those actually are like terms. Now we don't usually write it like this because remember we like to write it in alphabetical order. But if you look, these all have an m cubed, m cubed, m cubed, m cubed, and they all have an n squared, n squared, n squared, n squared. So these are all like terms as well. Okay? I bet you can guess what unlike terms are. Unlike terms are terms that are not like terms. So I think examples will help really clarify what like terms are and unlike terms. So I'm going to go with the 4x squared again. Here are some terms that are not like terms. They're unlike terms. 4x squared and 4x. Boy, those look a lot alike, 4x and 4x, but no, you need to have the same variables and the same exponent. This one is an exponent of 1, that was an exponent of 2. What about this? How about 3m squared? It's got the same exponent this time, but now this time you got the different variables. So those are not like terms. How about 7x squared? Looks good. Y. I put a y in there as well. No, those aren't like terms because there's no y in this one. So these are all different. Alright, let me do some more examples using the negative 12m cubed n squared. How about 7m squared n cubed? Looks good, except this one has the 3 on the m, and this one has a 2 on the m. This one has the 2 on the n, and the n. No, these are not like terms. Everything has to be the same. I don't know. What other example can I give here? 63m cubed n squared. Looks good, but I throw a p in there. Nope. Everything has to be the same. These are not the same. So these are all like terms with one another. These are all like terms with one another. These are all unlike terms. None of them are like terms in here, and none of them are like terms there. Which takes us to the most important idea for today, and here it is. Only like terms can be added or subtracted. You cannot add or subtract unlike terms. You can multiply and divide them. We'll talk about that in a few classes. But you can only add or subtract like terms, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to add and subtract some monomials. Look at all these monomials on the page that we're going to add and subtract together. Okay, here's the first one, starting simple. 5m take away 3m. Okay, imagine the m stood for marbles. 5 marbles take away 3 marbles equals 2 marbles. You don't lose the m, right? They have to be the same. Remember, they have to be like terms. And it also stays the same in the answer. Sometimes people say the answer is 2 because the m's cancel out. But that's not what happened when you take 5 marbles and remove 3 marbles. You still have marbles, so you got to have the m there. Probably my marble example is a bad example. But this is the answer right here, 2m. Okay, the next one. 2n squared minus 7n squared plus n squared. How many n squareds is this last one? That's 1n squared. And what you're going to see is you need to know your integers to do this work. Because what you have to do is 2 take away 7, and then plus 1. And when you get that answer, of course, you're going to make it n squared. So how do you 2 take away 7? Well, you might be able to do it in one go, or maybe you want to add the opposite of 7 is negative 7. So you have 2 plus negative 7. What do you have more of, positives or negatives? More negatives. How many more? 5. So it's negative 5 plus 1. And negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4. And remember, it's still n squared. Okay, from now on in all these questions, you don't have all like terms. I have some like terms, but not all. So there's two ways to kind of deal with this. One way is to rewrite it, which is probably a safer way to do it. So for example, I have 5a here, and I also have these 4a's. So I'm going to write that next. But remember, include the sign in front. So I actually have minus 4a. Then I have plus 3b and plus 9b. Now, if I just look at this bit, I can get an answer, and if I just look at this bit, I can get an answer. And that's the strategy here. 5a take away 4a is 1a, 5 take away 4 is 1. And positive 3b, right, there's a plus sign there, so it's like positive 3b plus another 9b is 12b. But don't just do this, don't just go 12b, it's plus or positive 12b. See what I could do to make it a little bit simpler? You don't need that 1 there, so a plus 12b is the best answer. Alphabetical order too, right? A's before B's. Okay, so that's one way to do it, is to rewrite it. The other way you could do it is you could use like an underline method. So for example, let's say I want to combine my x's. I have x's here. This is not an x, this is an x cubed. Oh, here's an x, so I could underline this one including the sign in front of it. So that's it for x's. So what I have first of all is 3x plus 5x. Well, that's 8x. Okay? Next I see some x cubes, so maybe I'll double underline those. Negative 2x cubed, and here's x cubed as well. Remember, that's 1x cubed. So I have negative 2x cubed plus 1x cubed. That's negative 1x cubed, right? Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1x cubed. So what I write down is, don't put plus negative, put minus 1x cubed. Because it was negative 1x cubed, just put minus 1x cubed. I know it's confusing getting comfortable switching negatives to takeaway signs and takeaways to negative signs. Okay, what do we still have? Well, we still have this minus 7. Maybe I'll do a squiggly line. Anything I can combine that with? No, there's actually not. So I'll just put negative 7. And maybe a double squiggly line here. I have a plus x squared. There's nothing I can combine that with either. So I do this. What do you think of that answer? Not bad. There's a couple of things I don't like. I don't like the 1 here. I could remove that. And also, let's do it in descending order, right? Let's start with our biggest exponent, which is the x cubed. So I have negative 1x cubed, or just negative x cubed. Then I go to my x squared, so it's plus x squared. Then I go to my 8x. What sign's in front of that? I don't see one. Well, if you don't see one, it's a plus, so plus 8x. And then you have the 7. But remember, look at the sign in front, minus 7. This is perfect. Written in that form will get you full marks. Next, oh my gosh, what are these decimals all about? Well, we did this last chapter. You should know how to add and subtract decimals. So I'll do my underline method again. I've got these many t squareds and that many t squareds. So I have 5.3 plus 1.9. Can't do it in your head? Do it off to the side. Remember how you add decimals? You'll line them up. And we add. 3 plus 9 is 12, carry the 1. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Decimal goes straight down, so I get 7.2. So that means I have 7.2 t squareds. Okay, and now I'm going to wiggly underline, I guess, negative 1.8t minus 0.3t. Uh-oh, that sounds hard. I'm going to write that over here. Negative 1.8 minus 0.3 is what I need to do. Well, remember, I don't like subtracting. I like adding the opposite. So I have these negatives and even more negatives. So is my answer going to be positive or negative? It's going to be negative, isn't it? And should I be adding those amounts or subtracting? Well, the signs are the same, negative, negative, so I'm going to add them. So basically what I have to do is 1.8 plus 0.3. 8 plus, see my decimals are lined up. 8 plus 3 is 11, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Decimal goes straight down, and remember, our answer is going to be negative. So, how many t's do we have? We have negative 2.1 t, and that's done. It's in descending order. We got our t squared and then our t. Looks good. Alright, they start getting pretty similar here. Let's go with our g squareds first. So there's a g squared, here's a g squared, which I'm going to underline the sign in front. So I've got 4g squareds plus 18g squared. 4 plus 18 is 22, and the g squared stays the same. Then I can underline a negative g. Remember, that's negative 1. And here's another g here. Can't do this because this is a g cubed. So I have negative 1 plus 6. Well, that's equals positive 5, or plus 5g. And the only thing we have left is this negative g cubed. Like the order? I don't. I want to put the g cubed first. So take the sign in front of it, negative g cubed. This one should have a plus in front of it, so plus 22g squared, and then plus 5g. That's the best answer. Oh gosh, look at this. We got some fractions here. Alright, well, this is an f and this is an f, so we can combine those. We can't combine this last one. But look, let's just do this in descending order. The first thing you should actually write is the f squared, including the sign in front. So the first thing you're actually going to have in this answer is negative f squared. And now what I need to do is 1/5 plus 1/2. Well, again, you should be able to do that. We've added fractions. We need a common denominator, right? What's the common denominator of 5 and 2? 10. So you're going to turn these both into fractions with 10 on the bottom. What do you have to multiply 5 by? 2. Do the same to the top. What do you have to multiply the 2 by? 5. Do the same to the top. So we end up with 5 times 2 is 10. Good. And 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Good. And 1 times 5 is 5. And now we can get our answer. 2 tenths plus 5 tenths. Keep the denominator the same. Add the numerators. You get 7 over 10. So in other words, when you combine these two f's, you get positive 7 over 10f or plus 7 over 10f. And we're done. It's in descending order because I made sure to put the f squared first. Alright, xy squareds and x squared y's. You know what you would write first? xy squared or x squared y? You'd probably put the x squared y because you have more x's. Now if you didn't do that, I wouldn't mark it wrong. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to put the x squared y's first. These are not all like terms, right? Because you need to have the same exponent on the x. And this has a 1, and this has a 2, this has a 2, and this has a 1. If you look at the y's, this one has a 1, and this one has a 1. So you want to combine the ones that are exactly the same. So I see I can combine this 3x squared y and this negative 4x squared y. Well, 3 take away 4 is negative 1x squared y. And then I'll combine this 2xy squared and this plus xy squared. I could put a 1 in there if I want. So 2xy squared plus 1xy squared. Well, that equals 3xy squared. So plus 3xy squared. Anything we can simplify? Yeah, take out that 1. We don't need it. So negative x squared y plus 3xy squared. Finished. Okay, last couple here. I guess I tried to make it harder with the decimals. It shouldn't be that much worse though. So let's do our w squareds first and our w's after. That way it'll be descending order. So we're going to do this w squared and this w squared. Make sure you subtract the sign in front. Alright, so what I need to do basically is 3.7 minus 9. I like to add the opposite. So plus, and 9 becomes negative 9. What do you have more, positives or negatives? I have 3.7 positives, 9 negatives. I have more negatives. I know my answer is going to be negative. Should I be adding or subtracting? This is a plus and this is a minus. Different signs. I should be subtracting, right? Do I go 3.7 minus 9? No. Start with the big number. So I start with the 9 and I subtract 3.7. 9 has a decimal right here. Line up your decimals. And you could put a 0 in the space right here, and now you can subtract. Got to borrow from the 9, and this becomes 10. 10 minus 7 is 3. 8 minus 3 is 5. Decimal goes straight down. We already said this answer is going to be negative. So when we combine our w squareds, we end up with negative 5.3 w squared. Now we can do our w's. So we have a negative w, which is the same as negative 1w, and we have a 2.8w. So if you want, I'll write that here. It's negative 1 plus 2.8. What do you have more of? Positives? This is a positive, or negative? You have more positives. And how many more you got? You can probably do this one in your head. If not, you're going to subtract 2.8 minus 1. You get 1.8. So it's positive 1.8, which means our answer is plus 1.8w. Finished. Last one. More fractions. Okay, we got m squared n's, m n's, and m squared n's. So I guess we should do the m squared n's first. They have a higher degree. We want it to be in descending order. So we should do this, and we should take away this. Oh my goodness. We have to do 5 6 take away 29 30ths. Well, it's hard to see which one's bigger right now. Let's get common denominators. Common denominator is 30. So obviously the second one's going to stay exactly the same. What do we have to multiply the 6 by? We've got to multiply that by 5 and by 5. So 6 times 5 is 30, and 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, you can probably do this in your head, right? 25 minus 29. If not, add the opposite. You're going to add, and the opposite of positive 29 30ths is negative 29 30ths. What do you have more of? Positives or negatives? Well, you got 25 of these positives and 29 of those negatives. You have more negatives. We know this answer is going to be negative. Okay, should you add or subtract? Well, they're different signs, so you should subtract. Take the big one, which is 29 30ths, and subtract the small one, which is 25 30ths. If you do that, you'll get 30 on the bottom, 29 minus 25 is 4 on the top, and we said it was negative. Hey, wait a minute. 4 over 30, we can put that in lowest terms. Divide them both by 2, you get 2 over 15, and it's still negative. Don't forget that. So all that work that we just did to figure out that the m squared n's, when they combine, become negative 2 over 15 m squared n. Okay, now we have to combine our mn's. So that's negative 7mn and plus 1/2 mn. So we have to combine negative 7 plus 1/2. Again, you can probably do this in your head. If not, you're adding, so don't change anything. What do you have more of, positives or negatives? Definitely negatives. You have 7 of those, only half of those. So I'll put my negative there. Do you add or subtract? You'd subtract because these are negative and these are positive. So you would actually go 7 minus 1/2 and then make the answer negative. I bet you can do 7 minus 1/2 in your head, can't you? 6 1/2. If you can't, you'd borrow from the 7, make it 6, and then you'd have 2 halves to make up that 1 that you borrowed. 2 halves make a whole. Subtract the big number. 6 minus nothing here gives 6, and 2 halves minus 1/2 gives 1/2. But I bet you didn't need to do that, did you? I'm just making it more complicated. And we already said back here that it's going to be negative, so our answer is negative 6 1/2. If you want to make it improper, you can. It'd be negative 13 1/2. But I'll keep it like this. So I go minus, don't go plus negative. Try to get in the habit of just putting minus when you have a negative. 6 1/2. And what were we talking about here? We were talking about mn's. And we're done. We've combined terms. All right, everyone. I hope that makes sense. We're bringing together some integers, some fractions, some decimals, and some combining monomials. Next day, we'll combine all sorts of different polynomials, like binomials and trinomials as well. All right. Take care, and let me know if you need any help.